Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy Heavens, and welcome to CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. In each episode, we dive headfirst into the world of marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the rollercoaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we are not just talking about challenges here. We are tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty-gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations, because sometimes I have no filter. So if you are a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or just someone looking to up their marketing game, then I am so glad that you are here with us today. And today I am so glad to have the very awesome Vanessa here with me. Vanessa, could you give the audience a little bit of a quick introduction?
Thank you so much, Lucy, for having me. I'm really looking forward to this today. Bring on some great conversations. So, hi everyone, I'm Vanessa Schotes. I have the pleasure of being the Chief Marketing Officer at Enfuce, an issuer processor. So we were very much work in the payment space. And I have the pleasure of leading a small but mighty rockstar marketeer team at Enfuce.
Lovely, thank you. So the title of this podcast that we chose is "It Takes a Village to Close a Deal,"
Sure
which I
does.
love. It really does. A mighty village, like you said. So how did this come about? And I think it's really from a conversation that we had around go-to-market channels and how we often end up in this sort of blame game, right? Where, for example, that we're chasing or companies are chasing what of the go-to-market channels, which one works best. Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it partnerships? When actually we know that it's kind of a clever combination of all of them. And where this becomes a real problem is where businesses are deciding where they're going to invest, right? And it often creates that kind of attribution problem between the channels, because they're kind of fighting over whether something's a marketing generated lead or a sales generated lead. And I think it also makes it harder for marketing to focus on brand, which obviously is very undervalued and in growth strategy usually. Because just marketing sort of finds brand so much harder to attribute to directly to those sources. But anyway, like we said, we know that it's a combination, and it's that village that it takes to close the deal. So let's jump into the conversation then. So why do you think that we are so obsessed with pinning down which is the best go-to-market channel, which one works, and why are we always looking for kind of the winning one rather than thinking more about why we're not working together?
So, look, I think it actually derives from a bigger problem across the business, right? I think we tend to think in org charts and functions. And as that marketing tends to be carved out, we also know that we're normally one of the biggest expense lines in the business. So there's a lot of attention and focus on it. And I think many businesses fail to really look at it as a go-to-market team. And that is the bigger team across pipe sources. And depending which business you are, obviously those are made up slightly differently. But I would argue, traditionally, at least, you'd have marketing, sales, and partner to some degree in there. And my firm belief, and I think what I see across businesses, is that is really critical to take that integrated view, because really what we should take our cue from is the customer journey and not how we're structured as businesses. So I think it comes from the inherent need that many management teams have to want to put ROI and proof points on things, and then almost taking a too single-minded view on trying to attribute across that. So I think it's actually on us as business leaders, not just marketing leaders, to make sure that we actually have really good conversations about what delivers business value and how do we define business value. And I think business value is never defined in who's bought what lead. It's defined by, have we, as a business, got the pipeline that meets our growth ambitions and can fuel that through to completion, and can we prove that as a business we can convert that demand that we've generated to give us the right commercial returns. So I think it's a bigger business problem, and I think marketers have slipped into a little bit of a habit of then going into, oh, I must justify my existence. And then we drill into all the nitty gritty detail and almost swamp people with a ton of data that often actually to those people in the business probably won't mean an awful lot. And then conversations actually, instead of getting more productive, get more challenging. So, I mean, I'd love to hear how that resonates with you, but that's kind of how I've seen it.
I love that. And do you know what? There's something you said very early on in that, like, really resonated, where you said about, you know, we need to focus on the customer journey. And I remember once being with an organization where we kind of mapped out the customer journey, and I was really, really excited about that. And then we started to carve parts of the of the whole customer journey out into, okay, well, what bit does marketing own? What bit does sales own? Where does customer success come in? And I remember just trying to, and it was really quite hard to have that conversation, but to say, well, actually marketing sits across the whole of that customer journey.
And I so know what you mean, because that's exactly the conversation I have, right? We're in so many ways, yes, we're a demand generator, but we're also a conversion enabler. We're also a partner in partnerships. And that's why I think this argument around pipe sources and like what was sales originated, what was marketing originated, what was partner originated, tends to be so challenging. And I'm in a little bit of two minds about things, because I still think you need checks and balances to make sure actually every pipe size is contributing, and that you don't have one performing really well while everyone else is, you know, painting their nails. But it's so, you know, you want to check and balance in there. But for me, it's about a collective view of, have we generated what we need to? And we all know everyone has a stake in things, right? I mean, a typical example that kind of comes to mind is, you know, partner source lead, amazing. You know, we've had something come through, we're jointly pursuing a prospect, excellent. But think about the touch points we might have had. So we probably had a partner event where we actually educated our partner about the key things that we've got in the pipeline and where we're focusing. Marketing team helped organize that. Then the materials that was provided to the partner to then actually capture the lead. Marketing was part of that. It will still end up in there as partner sourced in the pipeline, yet there's been a significant amount of work across the teams. So I think it's, you know, it's having an appreciation. You're totally right. Marketing does tend to cut across the piece. But then I think it's also, you know, for everyone to learn to leave egos at the door, because I actually think about all that time that so many businesses and so many teams are spending arguing about who generated a lead. It doesn't actually matter until that lead converts into business. And I just think the amount of time that's wasted having unproductive conversation and scrapping over something that could be totally meaningless should be a bit worrisome. So I think, you know, let's as marketeers also elevate the conversation. We're there to add value to the business, not justify marketing's existence. So,
and it's funny, isn't it, though, when they do become a customer, I don't know about you, but I normally find that's when the conversation almost turns on its head and everyone's patting each other on the back going, well done. Like, well, hold on a minute, 5 minutes ago, like before it became 100%. A customer, we were fighting over whose lead it was. Now we're all kind of congratulating and singing Kumbaya around a fire. But I think do you think that it is kind of has the kind of whole attribution thing actually, is that what's kind of like holding companies back really? Is it, where should the attribution go to, the kind of the source, not necessarily what department or function that the effort has come from, sorry?
Look, I don't think there's a carte blanche answer to that one, mainly because so many of your listeners will be coming from completely different companies and backgrounds, right? And what you are, even just in terms of resource and know-how, able to do from an attribution modeling perspective in a startup scale-up versus being in a scale-up to like turning corporate will be completely different, right? I've worked in companies where we've had amazing marketing ops teams with like 4 or 5 team members who did nothing but turn data upside down. And if you are in that situation, then I don't think you've got any excuse to mess around with things like single source, like, you know, first touch or last touch attribution. I mean, it's Mickey Mouse if you've got that kind of thing to hand, right? So there I would expect the teams to really be going into full path attribution modeling and actually attributing across the stage of the, you know, of the journey, who's contributed what, and can we model that? I think it also depends on the level of investment you're putting in. Like, A, do you have access to the capabilities to do that? B, does it give you enough meaningful insight to actually drive change or behaviors? Because if all you do is model it and then do nothing with it, you might as well save yourself the headcount and the time that you're doing it. And then, if you're, you might be in a company with a one-man band, two-man band marketing team. So I think the key thing is focus on, are you achieving the results for the business that the business needs? Is marketing playing its part, and can it prove that it plays its part in doing that? And it's not just is it a marketing sourced lead, but have we had touch points into that lead since it's been generated? Has that person been to a webinar? Have we met them at an event? Have they read the white paper? I think it's good for marketers to definitely understand that, and especially in B2B and B2B enterprise, even more so, you should be able to really be in the detail on that and be informed, because then you can see, how do I work with one of my key stakeholders, sales, to enable and make that process ever better and find new ways of marketing to contribute to that conversion journey. So I think the key thing is, as marketers, be clear on what you're doing and where you're adding value. But this whole idea of, oh yeah, at some point in the Stone Age, that person downloaded a white paper, yay, it's a marketing sourced lead, despite the fact that sales have been working it proactively ever since and actually then converted it. What kind of point is there in that conversation?
Yeah. Do you know what really occurred to me as I love like everything that you just said. You put it really beautifully. And I think what I really took away from what you just said is there's no difference between the two of that story that we're trying to tell there. What we're trying to tell is that marketing, sales, partnerships, we've all got a role to play in that. But then where the conversation starts to turn sour is when you just add on that bit at the end that says, oh, and it was sourced by marketing, or it was sourced by partners. If you just spun that one little bit around then and said, oh, and that's the, like you said, that's the role that we contribute, or the, how we contributed towards it, that's the role that we played. It just suddenly, you haven't changed the output. You've just changed the positioning of it.
Different conversation also doesn't put people's back up, and actually means people want to do more collaborative work to achieve the same outcome again, rather than going, oh, marketing always takes the credit, or damn, sales always takes the credit, right? Not productive. So I totally agree with you. Like, for it to take a village to close the deal, and we know it does, you need the village to actually enjoy working together and collaborating, because otherwise it's going to be hard to get everyone to turn up to the village festival to get this done. So, I think the magic is in collaboration and jointly figuring out which levers to pull, and then everyone playing their part. And I think a lot of that is about clarity and everyone having a good amount of understanding, also across functions, and then for everyone to be clear on ownership of who's pulling what lever and where do you need to collaborate. Because again, how often in B2B do we have things that marketing conceptualizes and then is reliant on sales to kind of do the lift on, right? Like it's a team game. I always say demand generation is a team sport, and I totally stand by that.
I agree. I was trying to, I'm really bad for kind of thinking up these sort of little analogies to try and sort of make a point that I want to make, and I can't get the whole village point, the village story to link to this point. But what I want to ask you, or what I want to say, is that everybody kind of has this that contribution, and like I said, when it becomes a customer, when that deal becomes a customer, then everybody is in a really great mood, and we're all patting each other on the back for every single little effort that we put in. But during that process, that's where the kind of tensions are, right? And some of the tensions from a marketing point of view do fall, like I said in the introduction, around that whole kind of like brand piece. Mm-hmm. So you get some parts of the business that will understand and really appreciate the effort that goes into brand building and the role that plays, or the importance of it. Some people don't, and it is always a little bit of a struggle, especially when it comes to sort of additional investment, getting that to kind of into brand. But how would you kind of defend brand's corner when in that story, in the village story?
Well, look, the data is out there if you look at it, and make sure you inform yourselves and you actually educate your management team as to why brand is important, but also make sure you actually have something important from a brand perspective to share and tell, because for so many, in particular B2B and tech companies, brand is still a set of corporate identity guidelines, and let's be honest, it's not a brand. Now, look, I have the huge pleasure of working for a business where we take brand really seriously. and also where there's a huge amount of support from our CEOs, from the whole leadership team in investing in the brand. And I'm so excited with the results that we have seen over these last few years since I've been with Enfuce, because it's really helped us to pivot the story. It's helped us drive awareness. It's helped us drive perception. And we all know perception is reality. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we could have done the pivot that we have in the last 2 years, which has been a huge shift towards enterprise and completely transforming average deal size and completely transforming kind of deals that we're winning. Without brand has played a massive part in that. Now, we were lucky in that even when I interviewed, our CEOs really bought into my vision. And I remember saying to both of them in the interview, what I want brand to do is create a halo effect that will then help us carry out demand. So it's me packaging up the data on what I know brand can do and saying, look, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, yeah, haha, halo effect, whatever, sounds good, let's give it a go. But and it was about a year to 18 months later where they were going, we get it. Like, we were sort of trying to understand what you were saying, but we really see the upside. And it's about how you story tell. It's about how you really get across not just what you do, but why you do it. How you add personality, even to something that's a utility. I mean, we do payments, right? Arguably, it's the sort of thing that most people don't even think about day to day. How does their money get from A to B when they make a card payment? But yet we need to find a way of differentiating ourselves. Yes, of course, through the solutions and the product that we offer, but also about why you want to partner with us as a business versus a different provider. And I do maintain people by people, whether it's in B2B or commercial, and building something that has a compelling story that gets across your why, that articulates your personality. It adds a huge layer that you can't always put in numbers. And look, I've had it, where people have come and like, you have to prove the ROI on X, Y, Z. And I've literally said, no, I won't. I'm not even going to go and do that right now because we've just launched the brand. It was like 3 months later or something. It needs time in market. This will deliver and you will see. And, the proof in the pudding with brand work, it takes a little bit longer, but you see the transformation story in terms of how's your pipeline developing, who you're landing with, and what actual feedback are you getting from the market? Are you getting the awareness? Are you getting the cut through? Are people understanding what moves you as a business? So I think the biggest element for me that enables this is trust. And you have to have the trust from your leadership team to kind of take a leap of faith with you. But if you can get them on board, and again, there's millions of case studies out there that show you that's the right thing to do. Leverage that data, get those examples, work hard at brand because you do it out of conviction and because as a marketing person, it will yield results, and stick to your guns, right? Use the data to back up your argument, but as I said, stick with your conviction and make the point. The results will follow, and I'm definitely excited to see that it does. And Enfuce isn't the only place where I've seen that. In a previous life, I've worked in a SaaS environment. Again, a big focus on articulating the underlying why and not just the what. And again, a huge success story at that business as well. And there was a lot of emphasis there on category development, brand storytelling, and again, really exciting to see what that leveraged result-wise.
I love that story that you told where you said, how you kind of positioned, I want to kind of create this halo effect, and they didn't get it first of all, but then after a while they saw it, you had the opportunity to see it. During that period where you was proving it, and it was fantastic, like you said, this is all kind of based on trust. They have to have sort of that trust in you to let you, give you the time to be able to prove it. But was there anything in between that you were doing that time where you were giving them the kind of signals that, like, this is working, this is working?
Well, look, also, marketing cannot do brand work in isolation, right? For me, brand work is as much about stakeholder management and harnessing the actual essence of the business as it is about marketing being creative and good at storytelling. What story are you going to tell if you haven't really attuned with the business? So it was a really collaborative process, and something that we really took the management team on and had huge involvement on, and had really regular updates, and really got everyone to buy along. And it was just so amazing to see so many of the pieces just fall into place. And you take the info, you articulate it up, you play it back, you go, does it resonate? Does it not resonate? Where do we need to tweak it? And then I think, also being brave to take a bit of a creative leap in things. And like, again, anyone who's come across Enfuce will know that we quite big on being bold and going quite creative on things. And I am forever grateful that the business always lets us do that and lets us buy into it. But then that, we're now into a period of time where you can really see the proof of what it's done. And, we've got my all-time favorite CFO in the business who just really gets it, right? And really celebrates with us that that value that we've been able to bring. And for him, actually, brand and brand awareness and brand sentiment are really important strategic measurements for how we're doing as a business. So, he goes well beyond, as you normally say, like counting the beans.
Yeah.
But he knows that those are strategic drivers that will fuel our growth, and he's absolutely in line with leaning into that. But that's a lot of stakeholder management. That is also making sure you celebrate your successes and you give visibility. I think one of the biggest things is that marketing sometimes, doesn't like too many questions and therefore will kind of get on with stuff. But also not celebrate too many successes, because that might mean people might have questions about other things.
Yep. Yeah.
Celebrate the good stuff, share it with the business, tell them why it matters, and get others to buy in, and also be proud of what you achieve as a business when you achieve something great with it. So I think it's like we said right at the beginning of the call, marketing doesn't exist in an org chart niche, and it has to be something that integrates across the business more than most other functions. And I remember it was not long ago, I was talking to someone and I was saying, how do you guys handle it? How do you do this internally? Like, how do you work with sales? Because, so often that's in B2B, the big question, right? Where can we do better? What can we learn from others? And this person was actually on the sales side, so not the marketing side. They said, we don't really work with marketing. And you're like, wow, okay, interesting. That's your biggest stakeholder in the business. How can you guys not manage to connect? Might want to be having a chat. So,
Wow.
it's, for me, it's that interconnection. And if you get that right, if you can find a way of focusing, as we said earlier, customer journey first, no egos, everyone is clear on their role. We know that at different points, you're going to want to leverage different functions to kind of massage people towards closing that deal and beyond, right? Into advocacy, into renewal, all of that good stuff, realizing your lifetime value, not just that initial contract value. Then it has to be that team sport, and it has to be that holistic go-to-market.
Definitely.
strategy.
I love what you said about the like the celebrating the wins. I know I'm sometimes quite bad for doing this, where I call it my mole mode, where you sometimes you sort of you build all of your, like a mole does underground, like all of your channels and everything that all of those tunnels and everything that you're doing, and you forget that actually on the outside world that they can't see this absolutely beautiful network underneath of all of these really great like tunnels and things going on. So you do need to pop your head up every now and then and sort of say, hey. But I think I'm also kind of like conscious that marketing, we're just crap, aren't we, at marketing ourselves? But I'm kind of really conscious that when you are sort of shouting about oh look, we were mentioned in this article, or we did this, or something that's kind of a little bit more brand awareness, that sometimes it's a bit like oh god, there they go again. But I think in terms of kind of collaboration, then to pick up on that, with and forming that kind of village with the other channels, in your experience, like, do you have any good kind of like stories where you've had a good you formed that good partnership, and then you've seen sort of like an example of that success, like as in there was this situation when kind of this happened, or yeah.
Well, I think one of the examples I always love, I mean, you look, B2B, again, depending which area you're in, either an event strategy will be part of your go-to-market or not. For us, it is part of our go-to-market, and we do know that people that we've met at events and where we've had good conversations just move through the funnel that much faster. it's important. Clearly, you have to find the right events with the right prospects, but generally a good thing to have in the equation. And just hearing, from people who come into the business, how it's run in other businesses, and I sometimes think, wow, to hear of the complacency that's going on out there. So I love the feedback that my team always gets, that we are extremely well prepared from a marketing perspective. We really tee things up for the sales team. It's run with military precision. Regional or field marketing will be on the back of sales. They will engage, and if it's the last thing they do, because we're wanting to, also demonstrate the return on investment, because we know it's a good channel. We want to be doing it again next year. So I think, it's getting it right, and then getting the feedback across the business, because everyone plays their part. It's marketing's part to organize the event and tee everything up and do that sales support to give them the best platform to do it. They then have to perform at the event and have to perform past the event. So so I find it a little bit weird when people come into the business and they say, wow, this is really well organized. I've not had that kind of support elsewhere. Well, why would you just go throw money at an event and then not prep for it properly?
Yeah.
Likewise, the comment, wow, I've never worked anywhere in B2B that's invested so heavily in brands. This is really great because it really helps the sales team. They really have a conversation point. So again, I think, too many of us out there are kind of painting by numbers, rolling off a playbook. Challenge yourself to do better, right? With everything, think about, could I do better if I partnered up with someone? Does the result look better if we don't look in work in functional isolation, but we engage our counterparts? How do I do so without kind of really annoying people and getting them to actually want to work with me on it, right? There's also a way of doing that stuff, because there's a way of going to the sales team and going, well, you guys aren't really engaging, and then going, come on, guys, we can do this. I've got your back. If we support each other, we can make this awesome. So think about how you stakeholder manage. First of all, stakeholder manage, and then secondly, think about how you do it.
Yeah, I like that.
To get the best result. Because again, it's all about that good vibe in the village to get the results done, right?
And they need a little bit of kind of encouragement, don't they? I'm going to be quite controversial here and say, but sales are very, and this is the nature of, they have to be with their roles, but they're always thinking about that last conversation that they had with the customer. They seem to forget kind of other conversations and other sort of customers. It's always just that last thing that's in their head. But they've just had a conversation with the customer and you've spoken to them about it. And they say, actually, it was really great because, I spoke to that customer and they said, oh, yeah, I know who you are, your company is, I saw you here, or so-and-so said about, you told me about you, or I saw your CEO speak at this event, or whatever it is. Actually, this is marketing.
Yeah, totally. And again, I think it's a bit how you stakeholder manage. Again, I think we've got some really good collaboration around that. And with us, marketing and sales is really tight. And I do think, that's important, but it's also really joyful to see how that works, and also the appreciation from both sides, right? Because, as I said, everyone has to play their part in making it a success. So, it's critical. And then the conversations should then be less about whose lead was it. It's more about celebrating the success of having converted it to revenue, because that's what we're all here to deliver, and that's what we're here to do.
So if we're all sharing the success, then should we be sharing the goals and the targets? And should we be sharing revenue targets, for example? This is another controversial one.
So I think, yes, I do think there should be an overarching revenue target. Now, does it mean that no one has individual targets? I think that comes back to an ownership piece where it's too much of a temptation for everyone saying it's not my thing. So the way we handle it is that we do have pipeline targets across the pipe sources, but that's a checkpoint to kind of see, do we have anything that for whatever reason is tanking? And then, we use it as a red flag to say, right, we need to double down on that and figure out why that isn't quite as expected. If we deviated from the plan, if we some resource changes, let's understand it and then remedy it. But ultimately, the responsibility is on everyone to contribute to that revenue number. Core sales need to get the contract signed, but everyone has to play their part and understand how the pipeline cascades up in terms of funnel targets to then get to that. So and then jointly celebrate that success when you get there.
Have you ever been in a situation where one of the channels is performing, but maybe spin it around the other way, maybe one of the channels isn't performing, and the other channels are kind of contributing? Like how would you kind of handle that? I know that's a conversation that I have many times, I'll be honest with you, with
Yeah, and in many
marketers.
organizations, right? I think that's quite a common one. Look, I think that the thing is, don't go into your corner and grumble about it. Have an open, honest conversation. See if there's some way you can help. I think again, with it being a team sport, you also need to have team conversations to address, and also be able to step up, because there might not be something you can do to fix that issue right now, which then means the other channels that are working need to overcompensate to help make up the shortfall. So then have that conversation. But the key thing is, talk about more things than what's immediately in front of your nose and is just called marketing, and try to have a constructive conversation as part of that team to see how do we, with what we have in play right now, with what's available to us, how do we meet the goal? And how do we leave egos at the door and group around what needs to be achieved with all we have available to us to get to that?
Do you think this is where we're starting to see the kind of emergence of this sort of chief growth officer, or the go-to-market leader that is owning all of those channels?
Yeah, and you hear that more and more, right? And I think it's good because it gives a name to more holistic thinking. And if that helps, then great. Why not? Again, I don't know whether titles are always helpful or a hindrance, but in many instances, it supports the thinking that all of that is coming together into a holistic view.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We're coming to the end of the time, so thank you so much. I could talk to you about this forever. There's so much to unpack with it, but it's been so interesting. Thank you. And before you go though, we do have one tradition with our with this podcast, where I ask my network, if you had a marketing leader standing in front of you right now, what would you ask them? So they don't know who it is. It's not directed at you. But the question for you is, what would be your best advice for avoiding, excuse my language, but fuck ups?
Look, I think the key thing is people tend to not like surprises. So communication. Be clear on what you're setting out to achieve and how you're going to do it, and make sure other people are aware and on board with what you're going to be doing. And, I think when you've done that, when you've effectively communicated along the way, you've managed your stakeholders well, even when something does go belly up, it's a much easier conversation to have than if you've just been gung-ho getting on with stuff and then it blows up in your face and then you have to go and explain it. So, work with clarity, be good in planning, stakeholder manage, and take other people along with you, especially those that might be caught off guard if a surprise whacks them around the ears, and be open and honest, even if it does fuck up. We all do.
Yeah.
You learn. Next time you'll do better. So, when it happens, own it, learn from it, move on. And most of the time that means it won't be half as big an issue as it feels in your head when you do it.
I love that. I think there should be more communication, honesty around fuck ups. Like you just said, you said it beautifully. Like everyone does it. We have to do it to learn. It's what drives innovation, right? And there was a company I was at before where somebody said that they'd introduced fuck up Fridays.
Oh, I've heard of that before, and I love that. Right?
I love
Because
it.
actually, and I know companies do celebrate fuck ups, because if you don't fail, you do not learn.
Yes.
Right. And actually, if you never fail, it means you're never brave enough to push the boat and try something new, because you're staying in a really, really safe space. And, what do we always say? No greatness has ever come from, without suffering and without every now and then falling on your face and then getting up, dusting yourself down and trying harder.
We're human.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Vanessa. It's been a fantastic conversation. So I hope everyone enjoyed it and took as much from it as I did. So thank you.
Thank you, Lucy.